When you're a top competitor at a major, there's a lot of things that you have to fight against. Your opponents having to prep, making sure you eat well and sleep well, and sometimes those just don't work. But one thing you also have to fight that you really shouldn't is the schedule. Schedules at majors have been very unpredictable and very subpar for competitors for a very long time. Not every single tournament has a bad schedule, but I would say that like most tournaments have schedules that are complained about by a large majority of the top players. So I wanted to talk about what's happening, why there are issues, and I guess how I think these problems could be solved. There's a lot that happens at tournaments, so I don't want to pretend like this is a super easy fix and, TOs are doing this just to screw over players. Obviously, that's not the case, but I definitely feel like there is a lot of room for improvement for especially the players that want to either play in multiple events or just make it far in the bracket. So first I'm going to break down the general schedules that exist for tournaments. If it's a 3-day major, day 1 is typically round 1 pools, doubles, and other side events like squad strike or anything else that's going on. Day 2 is typically just singles to top cut. If it's a super big major like Genesis or something like that, they might also have some round 1 pools bleeding over, because if you have like thousands and thousands of entrants, it makes sense that, some of the round 1 pools are going to have to play day 2. And then day 3 is generally the top cut or finals, whether the top cut is top 64, top 32, or sometimes just top 8. That is obviously a big deal because it's the final day, and that's obviously where a lot of the hype goes to. At a 2-day major, this is obviously going to be a bit compressed because those majors are almost always smaller. So you have day 1 is round 1 pools, doubles, and other side events. Also, I'm not talking about Japanese majors because Japanese majors don't have side events. If anything, they have lower ranking, redemption bracket, stuff like that, but they don't have doubles or squad strike or anything, so there's no conflict for the players making it farther in bracket. They just keep playing and go. So it's a little bit simpler for them. And then simply put, day 2 is top cut and finals. Some tournaments have the finals of doubles or the finals of squad strike on the next day, like low tier did, or low tide city. There's so many different LTCs. I'm sorry, Lost Tech, low tide, low tier, I get confused. But then day 2 is typically just top cut and finals. Sometimes the side event finals are on this day, which I find very, very bad, because basically you're making a very small subset of people that are probably in the top cut having to play very, very early and then have to focus on singles, which generally singles is the main focus for people, so I don't really like when that happens. Now let's talk about some considerations, because obviously there are a lot of things that the tournament has to do in order to have a tournament run. You have to run ads on your stream, you have to have the stream or multiple streams showing the games, so sometimes the stream queue can slow down the tournaments, because if you want to set 3 rounds of the top 64 into the stream, then that means basically everyone will be done with their set on stream, waiting for 2 more sets, and then the losers bracket gets backed up, and it can become kind of annoying. That's what happened at Genesis when we had multiple of our top 8 qualifiers off stream. Genesis in particular had a weird schedule because this day 2 singles to top cut area, there was 2 rounds technically. There was round 2 pools, right? So there was round 2 pools and then singles to top cut, because again, there was a lot of people. However, one of the weird things happened is that round 2 pools were separated into 3 different waves, which isn't divisible by 64, which was the amount of people that were in the top cut to get into the top 8, which was a little bit strange because it added 2 extra hours for basically no reason. There were a ton of setups that weren't being used. None of these pools were particularly big. They took like 1 table out of 16 tables, so I think maybe like 4 to 6 tables were taken out of the 16, and it could have just been like 2 more, and then we would have had an entire 2 more hours for the top 64. And again, personally, that didn't affect me. I didn't make top 64, but it was really frustrating to see a lot of incredibly hype matches cut for time, and the stream queue was really, really poor at that end because they decided to make the round 2 pools go for essentially 2 extra hours when it really didn't have to, and I don't think it made sense to, because again, they split the round 2 pools into 3 waves, which isn't like an even number, and I don't even know how that fit into a top 64 cleanly. Another thing we have to consider as well is the amount of setups a tournament can get, because in theory, if you had infinite setups, you can run a tournament basically instantly. That's never going to be the case, so you do have to break it up into smaller quadrants or smaller pools and stuff like that to make sure the tournament can exist and function. I am obviously not a major tournament organizer, so I don't know the costs of everything, so take this all with a grain of salt, because I'm not super I TO'd locals back in the Brawl days. It wasn't anything serious like that, maybe a couple Smash 4 tournaments, but it can be really complicated to, I guess, make the best of your equipment as well as everything else and make it flow into a schedule. I understand that it is difficult, but it seems like at every tournament that there are issues. It's just blatant misuse of, time or equipment in a way that's really, really strange. And I'm not even saying like take all the setups away from the casuals. Like you can still have multiple like 30, 40 setups for casuals and still have like plenty for the tournament. So given all that info, I want to suggest a solution that I feel like tournaments could do and they just choose not to, for basically the like long breaks that sometimes can exist between round 1 and round 2 pools. I know at Lost Tech, they literally had like 1 extra round for the winners players and 2 extra rounds for losers, I think, or maybe it was 3 to get into a top cut, but people had to wait like 6 to 8 hours for it. Like this was an entire wave of pools that took 2 hours. It is 1 set for the winners players and 3 sets for the losers players. One thing to note is that like this is all best of 5 as opposed to the pools before, which was best of 3. So I understand that there can be some logistical issues of people, you know, you have to make sure that your setups and everything are good, or rather not your setups, your brackets are good, and you like note where best of 5 is. But I feel like that's not that hard to do because you can just manually go and change these in StartGG. I'm pretty sure, if I'm wrong, let me know. But I'm pretty sure you can just go in and change these rounds and just make pools a little bit longer. So in cases like these, in my opinion, you could make pools instead of like a 2-hour block that oftentimes, you know, doesn't even go the full way, especially in like best of 3 territories. But instead of making pools a 2-hour block, you can make them a 2.5 or a 3-hour block and then just get rid of the entire other 2-hour block. Like there were people that played at 10 a.m. and then had to play at 6 p.m. or 10 a.m. and had to play at 8 p.m. when you could just have them play at 10 a.m. and be done at 1, and then you start at 1 and go to 4, and then 4 and go to 7, and 7 and go to 10, and it's the same thing but with a lot less issue there. And oftentimes in these cases you also are having like a stream queue, so people in that like in doubles or squad strike can literally just have other time to play it, you know. Or there's obviously the discussion of like, should we even have side events at super big majors, which like, you know, it's an American culture thing to have doubles, have squad strike and stuff like that, but still, like I feel like you can make this work even with the side events, or be like, hey, if you're gonna do a side event you can only enter 1 and just put a limit on that. Like there are plenty of people that have, you know, played a ton of brackets. Like I know I used to be one of those people, right? Or I would be like, I'm gonna enter Smash 4 singles and PM and Melee, and then I would like hold up brackets and I would end up DQing from one of them because I'm like, hey, this is taking too long. Or I would hold up bracket, or, you know, in my case, oftentimes I would just go back and forth and not have any rest between it and not try to warm up. But players like Mewtwo King or Wizrobe would warm up and then stall tournaments a lot, and people would just be waiting. In my opinion, there should just genuinely be a limit to how many events you can enter at events, especially assuming you're a top seed, right? Like you should probably have like, hey, like you can't enter 6 different events. Like that's not cool. You're going to slow the tournament down. Instead of just basically ruining the entire tournament structure, you just say, hey, these like 7 people that are gonna do this, sorry, you can't. I think that's a lot more fair to all the competitors as opposed to the couple of competitors that will be affected by that. Or just be aware that like, hey, if you're a competitor and you do that and things go slowly, you're going to have a priority list of what you're DQing out of. Like that's simple too. But because you're having your 2.5 or 3 hour pools, you can also structure things to be like, hey, if you are in squad strike or doubles, like you're going to be in these pools, and there's plenty of top players, like even like super top players that don't enter doubles, right? So you can just put all the people that don't enter doubles into one of the pools, run doubles at that time, and then you're fine. And I just went to Genesis's, you know, StartGG to confirm, yeah, there's literally an H wave of pools, an I wave of pools, and then a J wave of pools. I know that like some of the pools round 1 pools were starting day 2, but I still don't understand because this pool didn't start particularly late. Like I think I was in the first one. It started at like 3, which was plenty of time for the other round 1 pools, and you could have just had either a break or again have like 2.5 hour pools or 3 hour pools instead of the multiple 2 hour pools, and then have everyone in the same thing and then go into the top 64 bracket. Like I feel like these 4 pools could have just been put 2 pools in each of these other pools. There were plenty of setups, there was plenty of time, and it just made it make a lot less sense. And again, you could have shifted all this earlier, you know, made, oh no, a couple of people have to play Saturday back to back, but also a lot of people don't mind playing back to back because that means they're warmed up and they don't have to worry about anything else. But instead we went into the top 64 at like what, 7 p.m. and then by the time the stream had to cut off with all of these amazing sets, obviously the most hype and the most influential sets, like more than like 3/4 of these sets weren't streamed. And especially down here, there were some crazy losers runs that just weren't seen at all. Like Neos was basically not seen, neither was Shaddix, neither was like MVDs or Glutanies. Like there were so many. Zachary, like Zachary wasn't on stream literally a single time, and he's one of the most legendary players in Smash Ultimate, and he didn't get stream time at all, considering he fought Mia, Neo, and up here year he fought Sonics, right? So like, it's not like he didn't have hype sets to watch or like influential sets. He just wasn't shown. Even him versus DeBuzz, which was a crazy game 5 banger. Like, I don't understand the logic of splitting it up into those extra 2 hours or 2.5 hours to then just make the rest of the tournament worse. And I feel like tournaments do that all the time and just like make odd decisions that like don't limit, that's not limited by their hardware set, like the amount of setups they have. It's not limited by even like venue things because people were still in the venue the whole time, and it's not like having slightly like, you know, day one is obviously the worst for the venue because everyone's playing at once and it's a whole stressful thing, and I get that day one is always stressful, but like I feel like a lot of tournaments make odd decisions when you can just make these better. I don't think people are going to really complain about, oh man, I had to be in my pool for 2.5 hours or 3 hours instead of having to play 2 different 2-hour waves of pools 6 hours apart. Or, oh no, I only had 3 hours between my round 2 pools and my top 64 set. That's not enough. I need 4. It's like, that's probably not true, considering then also you have more time to rest between your sets in those top cuts probably anyway, because you have more time to actually run it and you're not scrambling to finish things. I don't know, I feel like schedules are just really weird at majors, and I don't quite understand their logic when I feel like there's a good amount of solutions to have. Obviously, like a big one, if you're not like doing something like oh my god, we have a different venue for the top 8 like Genesis does, you can just make the top cut like one set larger. Like instead of top 16, you can have top 32, or again, you can have like one where your round 1 pools go 1 round farther, note those as best of 5, and then everything back there is fine. Worst case, you do like 1 extra round of losers in these final, like the round 2 pools or the top cut or something like that, which again is also fine. And I don't quite understand why they're just like, yeah, we're going to make this like really awkward and strange. And this even dates back to like the Smash 4 days. There were plenty of pools that were just like didn't make sense, and like it would just be like super strange timings for things, and a lot of people were really upset by it because you had to be in and out of being prepared for bracket, which is obviously very difficult and mentally taxing for a lot of players because you have to be ready and be on, but also not waste your energy being on for these 3 hours where you're off. But then also you have to play, and like it would just go back and forth in this super weird like timing of stuff. And I feel like there's like so much better that TOs could do. And I feel like, I don't know, I'm not gonna say they're not trying, but I feel like they just go with like the grain of what it currently is. But also like every single major, I will see multiple players complain about the schedule, like top to bottom, right? It's not even like just the top players that are complaining about that, but like the people that made it into round 2 pools and like lose out there. So, you know, like 129th, you know, that type of area. Or just like, yeah, I don't know why I had to wait hours when I just had to play 1 more set, and I could have just played that at the time and then had my entire rest of my weekend be free instead of knowing I had to come back here in 8 hours after my round 1 pool to then continue to play. Like, it's so strange to me. Let me know what you think. If you have any of weird scheduling stuff at majors down below, let me know. I would love to read them. I'll be in the comments for this video a lot for sure. Thank y'all for watching. As always, Stride, partner stuff, blah, blah, blah is down below. Again, Jam Tekken Slam is tonight. Be in my streams. It's gonna be hype. I'll see you all next time. Peace.